Oh, thank you for inviting me, Mel. It's fun to be here. And let's see how. Oh, I'm used to the touch screen, so it makes me dumb.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk. I'll try to present.
Okay. And so I brought a few images to show you. Being in Oakland has. I live in Oakland, California. I'm a professor at Mills College. I'm an English professor, and I mostly teach African American literature as well as Black cultural studies, Black feminist theory, Black women's history. I'm a literary historian by subdiscipline. I write books about Black writers in the 19 or in the 1800s, a time when most people probably don't realize Black writing existed, or at least even I didn't realize the scope of it, even after finishing grad school and being a professor. And so I think that picks up on a couple of the themes in my art too, because in my art, I'm really interested in African American life and community and representation. And I'm also interested in telling Black stories that don't get to be told. And so, in some ways, I use art to use my own story to tell the story of others who don't really show up in the news or in the media, or most importantly for me, the popular imagination of what Blackness means. And so that's why I call my work kind of a different lens. I use my lens. I use drawings to kind of work my way through a visual journal of how I see and interact with Black people every day. I identify as genderqueer, and I'm very interested in masculinity, particularly Black masculinity and masculinities, and how African American men have been allowed to be visible, and how they're visible to those who exist within inside the Black community. And so I'll just show you a few of the works that I've created to kind of explore that idea. The first piece I'll show you, and I have just a handful of images. You'll know how many I could show because I have a project called 1001 Black Men, and I spent about 6.5 years drawing 1001 Black men in the SF Bay Area, but also wherever I would travel. If I traveled to New York, traveled to San Diego Comic Con, but I drew the men I saw in the Bay Area. I saw in my day-to-day life. And I took a little bit of artistic license from time to time. For example, in this case, you can see that this person is kind of history is their foundation. They're kind of sitting on history, and I had fun creating a cube on which they're sitting that brings up that includes past images of Black men. This is another piece from my 1001 Black Men series. Once again, kind of using the way that I see Black men as a way to tell Black stories that don't often get to be told. This was from the Rugby World Cup of about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago now. And although there are a lot of people of African descent who play rugby, it's not a sport that in the US is associated with Blackness. And as a former rugby player myself, I'm thrilled to see the extensive participation of Black men, Black women, Black folks of all genders in this sport. Um, and I'll just say quickly, there's a rugby ball, and it says Zonde. There's a big brand of rugby materials called Barbarians, and I just thought I didn't want to really create an image of Black men holding a rugby ball that says Barbarian. But Zonde was a fierce warrior from the 18th and 19th centuries, and I thought if there was a Black rugby brand, toughness would be Zonde, not Barbarian. This is from a series of drawings within my larger 1001 Black Men, once again using art to tell a journal of my Black life. This isn't as local as some, because with this I went to New York. I went to the Kahinda Wiley exhibit. If you're not familiar with his work, he paints these huge, beautiful portraits of everyday Black men in classical poses, poses associated with fine art and old master art. And what I was thrilled by was the opportunity to actually do drawings of Black men looking at portraits of Black men. And so my gaze was on them as they were gazing on the art. And I just had this, I guess, excitement by proxy, just trying to imagine what it is like to finally see yourself represented in a way that captures some aspect of how you see yourself as someone diverse, beautiful, stylish, even in your just everyday comportment. I came back to the Bay Area and I couldn't help but draw Black men at art exhibits. This is an exhibit many years ago called Glitter Bomb at Somarts. I had a couple of pieces in that, but once again, I was looking at black people looking at art about black people. And there were a lot of black folks in that exhibit. There were a lot of queer people of color whose work was in that exhibit. And so I was really interested in this, in just capturing as many people as I could, black men in particular, looking at the work. Once again, when people think art exhibit, when they think people who appreciate and are benefactors of the arts, they don't think about black people. But that's my art world, and I want that to be in people's minds. Um, After I did 1,001 Drawings of Black Men, I had the pleasure of doing a show of 8 pieces for Strut, which is a gay men's health center on Castro in San Francisco. And for that, I decided to take a break from drawing exactly the people I saw and instead draw people inspired by what I saw. And so for that piece, I did pictures that kind of capture the notion of intimacy between black men. People can interpret or read into the images in any way, shape, or form, but I really wanted to show black men in community with each other, the way that they help each other. And people think of black men as this kind of isolated person, and if they're together it must be a gang. But I always see the love between black men of all genders, of all orientations. And I think the barbershop is one of those places that kind of embodies all of that, with black men caring for each other, their hair, um, in ways that really only black men and black folks of all genders, really, but mostly black men, have become experts in the care of black men's beauty. This is from that same series, and um, inspired by my local experience. This is once again another piece from Strut. The previous piece was inspired by my trips to the barbershop, which are always fascinating to me. I'm both participant and observer. But also, how local is this? The background, I use local photos that I took. This is my closet, for example. And so I imagine that these two guys and I would probably have a lot of the same shirts. And so, once again, this notion of intimacy, of helping each other, of sharing. A lot of times, one of the things people talk about with black families is, well, if families are not traditionally structured, who teaches whom how to tie a tie, who teaches the young kids how to tie a tie? And so I just thought about that, and I thought how black men kind of I just thought what an intimate, wonderful moment to share. And There's a novel by a Latinx writer. It's a queer love story between two boys, and it's called, I think, Dante. See, now I can't remember. But they share the secrets of the universe. And so this, I thought, well, here I'm going to create two black men sharing the secrets of the universe. And once again, that notion of intimacy and caring and friendship and love. And any way, shape, or form folks want to interpret it. I also always think of black people as the first people. And so, kind of evocative of this notion of origins and universes. Um, this is not a local picture. Um, I actually can't take a picture of the planets from my front yard. And then the last, actually, this is just two more pieces I want to show. This is a picture of Dolores Park in the background that I took. And I just wanted to capture, but actually less when I go to SF Pride than when I go to Oakland Pride. I love seeing black male elders styling out for the day, and I thought, capturing a couple of these guys, and this was once again kind of an imagining a composite of a lot of people I remember for the Strut show, putting on their clothes, trying to look their best, and before they walk out into the park, just making sure they look just perfect, making sure the hat is on just right and the glasses. Um, this is a couple of pieces from the 1001 Black Men show or collection of queer folks in Oakland, outside the Hive Cafe on MacArthur Boulevard in Oakland. And Another piece of a man that I saw in Oakland, boldly sporting some great lip color and an awesome Afro puff. Who doesn't love an Afro puff? And then the last picture I'll show is a self-portrait that is both fantastical and local. It's called A Portrait of the Artist at the Crossroads. And of course, these are not local people. This is Robert Johnson, the blues singer, on my left, and on my right is Robert Frost, looking really sinister, the poet. Um, accidentally on purpose. Um, and Robert Johnson's Crossroads, of course, are in Mississippi, where he made a deal with the devil to learn how to play the guitar. I'll let you decide if that's true. Robert Frost's Crossroads are, of course, the roads not taken. It's two roads that diverge in a wood. Um, my crossroads are MacArthur and High, so I decided to reinterpret that for something that's local from my experience. So I do a lot of illustration, mostly about black folks, mostly about black men, and sometimes about myself.